welcome to another episode of Inside the Muster Room, where we discuss the forever war, the war on crime, with law enforcement experts from around the world. Today, we sit with Captain Shane Willard, who was an operator in the elite South African Police Special Task Force, a renowned unit which conducts counterterrorism, counterinsurgency, and hostage rescue operations, just to name a few. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure, and yeah, thanks for having me on your show.
So just to start out, why did you want to become a police officer or join law enforcement?
Basically, when I left school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I joined with my friends. I went to the prison service, and then I became a dog handler. And after about 3-4 years, I decided it was a little bit boring. It was the same thing, more or less, always. And it wasn't anymore for me. I didn't enjoy it as much. And then I got an interdepartmental transfer to the South African Police. And that is where my mission started,
I know that's pretty common here in the United States that people go from corrections to the police force. Is that very common in South Africa?
Kind of, yes. There's quite a couple of people that moved over from the prison service because it's a state department, and then instead of doing the full 6-month selection course in the police force, they will put you on a smaller course of 3 months. And then you obviously learn about all the laws of the country, and you do not as much as you would do in your 6-month selection. And when we went to the police force, when I went, I was with all the other guys and girls that had degrees. So all the people that had degrees and they joined the police, they were also put on this shortened basic police training course. So it was quite enjoyable, It was quite a mixture of us, It wasn't only men. The women obviously stayed in a different barrack, but we all received training together. That was very easy for me, actually, coming out of the prison service, where we had a very extremely rigorous training of 6 months. Very tough, actually, in those years.
Well, I'd like to get more into some of your experiences in the prison service, because from what I understand, that is some pretty rough duty. You worked with dogs in the beginning. What was that experience like?
Yeah, when I finished my training course, then they sent me to the central what I call it, depot, where they keep all the firearms and all the available stuff for the prison. And for 6 months I did night duty most of the time, and that was extremely boring. Walking around at night, having to stay awake, and it was just very boring. And I basically told them after that, if I'm finished with my 6 months, because I had to go for 6 months, you're gonna send me to the dog unit, where I want to become an instructor as well, to train other dog handlers, and or I'm gonna get another job. And then they sent me to Nigel, where the head dog unit for training is. So I went to Nigel and I worked with many different dogs. I trained many dogs. My own dog that I had, his name was Rommel. He was very intelligent, very friendly dog, but he could bite. And I basically, on weekends, every second weekend or so, we will have shows for the people. And my dog's specialty was high jumping, and he also jumped through the fire hoops. Yeah, and then after a while, that was probably another 6 months or more, it became boring to me as well. And I told them, listen, send me to, it was then Modderbeer prison, send me there, where I can go work inside the prison, to be able to, do more exciting work. So off me and Rommel went, and we, the first time I went into the section in the area usually where the fighting starts between the gangs is inside the area where they get fed, where all the prisoners get food. And he could just not handle the inside of the prison, all the noise, the clattering of the metal buckets and all of that. And me and Rommel walk out of the prison with our tails between our legs. So it took me, I called then Nigel head office and I asked him, listen, I want your most aggressive dog that you've got, because I saw this is a tough prison, it's very tough inside. And I also asked him, don't put my dog down, just send him to a unit. He's trained very well, send him to a unit where he can work outside in a field. Because outside in a field, he was perfect to work where it was quiet and where they worked in the mealie fields and all the other vegetation. Obviously, the prison had different farms where we grew crops to feed the prisoners. And they sent him to some prison where he worked outside and he could retire there. And I got Hermans. And it took me probably 6 months to train Hermans. And it was a very stubborn dog. The poor dog was tied on a chain and he only received bread and water. That is what he grew up with. Very, very beautiful German Shepherd dog. And but his body was weak. So as I trained him, if I would walk him on the tar road, then his paws will start bleeding. So then I had to take his cage, make a special cage for him, put it on the grass. Because all the kennels were made out of cement, the flooring. So in the mornings early, we would obviously clean it with a hose of water. And then I put Hermans' a kennel for him, especially on the grass. You know, I bound up his paws. I looked after him. I bought milk and eggs and other stuff out of my own pocket to be able to give him the vitamins and everything to heal and to get strong. So I've trained him up and now I had to do tackles with him. He had the natural ability to be able to protect. And then, you know, one of the wardens, we used to do tackles for each other. So we will make the dog more aggressive, which is important. And one of the dog handlers, he ran tackles for him. So at the beginning, you train him to bite on the arm guard. So the rest of the suit was just a thick piece of leather. So to make sure, should the dog bite there, he's not going to bite through it. So I sent the Hermans off, go tackle the, you know, the other dog handler that's now, you know, the attacker. And then he saw, no, this arm is too big, you know, I'm not going to bite the arm. Bite the leg. And I removed him obviously as quickly as I could, you know, and I said, okay. So we took a prison blanket, we put it underneath that. And he said, okay, he's going to bite for the right leg. So then he ran again. So he said, no, this leg looks good. So we bite it on the left leg. So each time he did tackles, you know, they had to put special blankets and stuff underneath that because they never knew where he would bite. And I knew I'm not going to train him to bite in the arm now. I'm not going to change it. And the reason being, with the gangs in the prison, should they stab an officer, they move up in rank. And especially if they can kill a dog or the dog handler, they can injure him, they move up in rank. So should my dog bite, and he will bite by the leg, you know, the attacker will have a knife in his hand. He will put blankets around his arm because he knows the dog's going to bite in the arm. He stabs the dog, he can kill the dog. And, you know, we had no other weapons except our dog and us. And so when he bit by the leg, then I will obviously just pull him back because he will not let go if I don't give him the command. So then the attacker will fall over and then I can get control over the sharp object. So, I mean, I can't say up to now, but when I went there a few years after I left the prison service, you know, they still remembered me and Hermits. Because we were quite a good team, you know, with all the other good dog handlers, we were a very good team. And, you know, we had to do what we had to do. We had to protect the other wardens, and we had to sort out trouble when there were trouble. And that probably, because of the intense atmosphere, that kind of, I would say, prepared me when I went and started the task force selection. So it gave me a certain amount of grit to be able to push through and not give up.
Can you talk a little bit about that bond you get when you train that dog, and that dog is basically your partner? I hear when I work with people who work in canine that dog is like any partner would, like a human partner almost, like you are truly brothers.
Yes, it is. If somebody attacks your dog, it is like he attacks you. If they attack you, the dog recognizes it and he protects you. So it is an unbelievable bond. And the only sad thing is, you know, we live 60, 80, 100 years, and the dog only lives 10, 12, maybe 14 years. His period that he can work is maybe 6 or 7 years, you know, and then after that he retires. So with each dog, I had a couple of dogs, each dog that you have to, you know, if he passes away, or you have to give him away because of certain circumstances, it is not the easy thing. And that's why, as such, currently, I've got no animals except stuffed animals, you know. Still got my Alsatian. That was given me years ago as a, you know, as a software. But in the future, I will get dogs again, and I'll train them, and I'll have at least 2 with me when I do my security-related work.
When you're training the dogs, did dogs have different skills or missions? Did you have dogs that specifically were to smell narcotics, or were these all made for tackling?
They were basically patrol dogs, so they could track. So in case a prisoner escaped and we have a piece of clothing of him, then he will take the scent, and if you know in what direction he went, he could track down a prisoner. My first dog, Rommel, he was very good with that. Herman's usually also got close to 100% when I did, you know, when he did his monthly or his 3-monthly exercises, then you get a certain percentage for you to be able to work. And they were basically all patrol dogs. When we taught a dog to smell out the narcotics, then usually that dog was not aggressive, because he'll go between the prisoners and he should not, you know, be aggressive, because the only thing he needs to do is he needs to smell the narcotics, show you where it is, and you know, it's not a purpose for him to bite. And
maybe you can set the record straight on this. You always see it in movies that if a person is running away and he's being pursued by dogs, well, as long as he runs through a river or a brook or some form of water, right, that the dogs will now lose the scent. Maybe you can set the record straight on that.
He must walk down pretty far down the river. I mean, if the scent, it all depending how the wind blows. So if the wind brings the scent to him, if the wind blows away from the dog, then he will lose the scent for sure. But then you will always get the track, obviously, somewhere on the river. You can pick it up again. It's same like if you do human tracking, you know, you do what we call in Afrikaans voorsny. So you send one of your teams ahead, and then they will look into the roads to see if they've got tracks. And maybe they 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers already ahead of you, and they pick up that same track. Then we'll all move into vehicles. We will leave the track where we are, and then we'll pick it up from there. That team will then go further with that, and maybe we will then we'll go ahead to see if they've crossed the road, because they can't cross the road without leaving tracks.
And after this service, you, of course, joined the South African police. What were some of your earlier assignments? I understand you drove a complaint van for a while. What was that like?
Yeah, they sent me, down where I applied for work, which was Cape Town Central. And, I learned a lot, because the work is a little bit different, but I was not like they would call, if you just start with the police, they call you a blowgat. So a blue butt, if you want to say it as such directly in Afrikaans, but I was never that, because I already had ample of experience. There was quite a bit of action, because the criminals in South Africa can be quite adamant, and it can also be quite dangerous. And the police force then as well, like now, I believe we were understaffed. So, sometimes when I would work, for instance, with a lady, and then some of them, are not as strong as others. But what I want to say, there was one girl that I worked with, and she was quite strong, and you could always depend on her if there was trouble, She would help you arrest the subject and bring everything under control. She was not scared of anything. The smaller ladies, obviously, they battled a bit. And one Friday, I can remember explicitly, when I drove the complaint van, I was the only cop in the whole Cape Town region. One van, I had to listen to complaints, note it down on my A4 page, and I had to attend to the most important ones first. And so I went through my whole shift of 8 hours, I believe it was then. And then at the end, the only thing you can do, because you can do nothing else, you hand over all the complaints to the next shift. Maybe they're more, maybe there's another vehicle, and they can start attending to those complaints. Those years, we still went to the houses, and then we took the complaints at the houses. Now, I believe it is more, you will go to the police station, because understaffed, and probably some other reasons as well. Unless it's a serious crime, they'll obviously come to your house or wherever the crime was committed.
Do you have some stories or experiences you can share from your early days patrolling in Cape Town?
Yeah, that's a while ago. But yeah, there were quite a few stories, For instance, if I now can go back to the Blue Butt episode, which they used to call me, and I actually didn't like it, because I didn't know where I came from and what I went through. And then there was about 4 of them. They tried to, when you bring in a suspect, and it was a big guy from the flying squad that brought in this one guy. And, he was on drugs and probably alcohol and a lot of other stuff. It wasn't that big, but he was incredibly strong. And then they take him, we take him and we put him in the cell that's in our office, in a complaint office. Then he needs to be, locked in, all the paperwork needs to be completed before he gets transferred to the main cells. And then about 4 of them tried to contain this guy, and they couldn't contain him. And I was in the front, the Blue Butt, and I was taking complaints with the people that came in. So I took their statements, and then I would log the case. And then I looked at these guys. I said, listen, you guys, you think you're so tough, and you call me the Blue Butt, And after they battled, they had to lock the cell again. I said, okay, let me show you how to do it, And obviously I went according to the law. I put my tonfa in, like they trained me in a police college. And then you have to touch him and said, I'm going to move you now to the other cell. You have to obey because I'm an officer of the law. And only then if he attacks you, you may then retaliate because he has to obey. So it took me a while and I brought him under control. And the cell guard then helped me very nicely. And we put him into the cell. After that, they never ever referred to me again as the blue one. Never again. I will not get into full details, but this is just summarizing it shortly, you know.
Well, you definitely got the job done.
Yeah.
And it shows that you were really ready to go to the next step. I mean, you were getting pretty good at what you were doing on that patrol level, and it looks like you were pretty much ready for that next step. Can you talk a little about that next step, that special task force? What is that unit? How did that unit get started? What's the basis of that?
Yeah, after about a year, you know, I got kind of bored doing the complaint van and being in a charge office and taking the people's statements. Sometimes I'll come in there intoxicated. And it's boring, you know. Sometimes you have to show them a way, tell them come back when you're sober, and some other issues. Some stuff I didn't like. And then I wondered, you know, what am I going to do after this? I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. And I went to town one day and there was a guy called Herman. My dog's name was Hermans, but this guy was called Herman. And I saw him talking to another guy. And then I picked up on the conversation and I stopped and I listened to what I was saying. And then Herman was on his way to do the selection course. And then I inquired because I never knew about the unit. It's almost like the readers that don't know about a unit. One of the reasons I wrote the book, so that the international community and many South Africans can know what the special task force entails and what operations we could do. And then I was very intrigued, and then I inquired, you know, how can I join? And I only had 3 weeks left. So one girl that worked with me, she knew one of the operators then in a task force. And then he put my name on for selection. So I had about 3 weeks to train. You know, I always trained and then I will stop training and I'll train. So I could just get my muscle basically ready so I won't fail. So for me, when I started the task force, it was much more a mental thing than a physical thing, which it is. And when I went up, you know, I saw Herman for the first day, and everybody thought he was going to make it because he was as fit as a window. I saw him the first day, I never saw him again. And after my 6 months selection course, when I completed it successfully, we can speak about it just now. Then they have to transfer me back to my station, which was Cape Town Central. And now the commander there, the colonel or the brigadier, I think it was a colonel, he has to complete the transfer papers to transfer me to the unit, the special task force. And then that colonel, when I walked into his office, when I got back to Cape Town, I wore my camo uniform and my wings, which I earned, you know. And then they told me when we went out on the street to do operations, because they said they were short-staffed, they didn't give me a break. And then I said, no, you may not wear your cameras, you know. So I had to wear my blue uniform, but I still wore my wings, you know. And then you obviously get lots of questions because there's not many guys that have made it. To give you an idea, between 96 and end of 2004, more or less 401 guys made the selection course. So it's not a lot. That is where my book also stops, 2004, because I left the unit in 2002. And I could give it a little bit of leeway, another 2 years, because obviously the unit changed. The country changes and they have to adapt. So for somebody to continue after that, it will have to be somebody fresh in the unit. That is not for me. So now I went to the colonel and said, Colonel, I need to be transferred to Pretoria now. We only then had the unit in Pretoria. He told me, no, we're short staffed. You're going nowhere. I said, Colonel, I don't think so. My previous excuse, yes. And so I pick up the phone, I call, I think it was in Major Fryer that passed away. He was a general, God rest his soul. And I said, listen, Major, the colonel don't want to sign my release paper. He says, what? Just hold on. So he called General Blackjack. That was one of the founder units. So General Blackjack then sat in head office. So obviously they rang down on the colonel and it was quick. He called me in the office, said, no, you can go, you're released. So I still had to work a few days before they finally moved me to Pretoria to start my next 10 years that I was in the unit, to start my next, I can't say mission, but almost it's like a life experience, because it was very challenging. It was amazing, all the courses you could do, because at that age especially, you know, you like the adrenaline, you like all the challenging, difficult stuff, the skydiving, the scuba diving, the rock climbing, working with explosives, and many other facets that we could do. So for me, I did as many courses as I could. And I will still say it up to now, I'm still one of the, I'm now an ex-operator, but I'm still one of the highest trained, if not the highest trained. There's not many guys that can say they've done as many courses as I have done. Maybe Brigadier Scott, because he was there much longer, and I even sent him overseas, you know.
Well, what exactly is the Special Task Force? If you had to explain exactly the capabilities of the unit and what their duties are to someone, you know, from the United States, for example, who might not know about this unit, how would you explain that?
Right. I basically, I don't know if I'm the first one, but I'm the first one that put it in a book format, that label it as a Special Forces unit inside of the South African Police. And I basically, with facts, I write it in there, and I've had no comebacks on that. Not even our reconnaissance unit, nobody. Because they know the standards that we get trained in. The main thing of the Special Task Force is hostage release. So the Special Task Force is a land, sea, and air. So boats, planes, buildings, wherever there are hostages, even out of vehicles. We've done a couple, which I write about it in my book. And that is the main objective. But I'm going to speak now. You know, when I was in the unit, one operator had basically to do everything. So you were trained urban and rural. So you would be able to do reconnaissance jobs. Sometimes we had to go into the field. Unfortunately, I didn't put in my book, there's a picture, the last picture that we did a reconnaissance unit. Me, Bet, Greef, and Henry in KwaZulu-Natal. That was quite something else. We had to walk in the dark with our S8 infrared light and night vision through the shacks to get to a viewpoint where we could give information back to the team. We went for one night, we packed for one night. It was a very difficult operation that. And we stayed there for 3 nights. So you would be able to do hostage release. You would be able to jump in if you in enemy territory, to land somewhere, to take a track down. Let's say it is a farm murderer, somebody that, you know, tried to kill someone on a farm or kill them. We can fly in or drive in. We can land there with tactical kit. and then we can take the spoor, we can take the track from there, and we can survive for long. One of the courses that we did on selection was survival, which were not easy. It was, if you read my book as well, it will explain it better. And when I was on my selection in 1992, Jim Hooper wrote a book about Khufu. Luckily, he was there on that selection course, and he took pictures when we did our survival course. And one of the exercises that they did, they would try and extract information out of you. And then they will torture you. In the book, you will read about the ways they did. And then you have to stick to your story after they've interviewed you, interviewed you. They'll put you back in a cage with all the other guys in the middle of the winter where, the water gets freezing temperature in the bush. And then you just wait for the next turn, next day. And I mean, the instructors will come late at night, and then they will urinate on you, stuff like that. Luckily, the second day we saw a gap, me and some of the guys, and they didn't double lock the chain, and we ran into the bush, and I got water, and I got some rest and some meat and whatever,
So this was part of the selection process, or this was training you received after selection?
This is part of the selection process. Everybody goes through it, those years. Some of the training, they stopped probably after, I would say, 96, 97. Some of the training, like the cages, they stopped that. You will do your fast bait when you start. That's about the 86-hour, no sleep, no food. Usually, especially during the day when it's hot and so, you can drink water as much as you want. Usually, sometimes they forbid you, all depending. But I mean, the water that you get out of that water truck is almost like kettle water, because it's 50 degrees outside, and it's the sun burns down on that metal water container, but you have to drink as much as you can. And then some guys ask for cold Coke, for the instructor. And you don't see much long after that. After that, you will do urban selection. You will do rural course, about 6 weeks each. The selection process has changed from year to year. So what they do now in later years, they've got a prep con phase, because too many guys falls off. So they do psychological evaluation. They'll do fitness evaluation. If you're not fit enough and so on, then they will at least 50% fall off that. So if you get a passing rate of 5%, it's actually 2.5% more or less. Then you'll do trains, planes, and buses phase, where you do hostage release out of them, because you learn to shoot to perfection. And in a task force, the rifle is not really your secondary weapon, but for us, the pistol, you had to shoot extremely well with it. And the sole reason for that is because, if I look at the movies, and then somebody gets taken hostage, and, the whole head of the hostage taker sticks out, and he's got this, handgun against the head of the person he's taking hostage. I can't understand why doesn't he take the shot, because our targets were such that part of the woman's head, let's say, would be covered by the hostage taker, and the head is smaller as well. Because, like Blommy always used to say, we can't afford any mistakes when it comes to hostage release. So even if you only have part of the face open, you can still take the shot. But it is usually the snipers that take out the hostage taker. It is usually their shot. If they cannot get the shot, it would be the penetration team that comes in. And when you go through a door, there will be two guys, you cover each other, and then you will have an MP5 and then you'll take him out with that. Or we had mini Uzis before that, or it will be your pistol. You have to be able to shoot extremely well with your pistol when you're a special task force operator.
Can you get into the firearms a little bit more? What exactly were you equipped with? What different firearms were the operators proficient in?
Many foreign weapons. RPD, RPK, the R1, 308. When we started, we had Browning high powers. We had Uzis, which jammed a lot. The mini Uzi was a great gun. And then we had these big old S8 lights. S8 lights, we had AR, we were trained in that, 50 cal grenades. Many different weapons. There's a whole chapter in my book that explains all the weapons and all the weapons that we were trained in, that we shot with. My favorite weapon of all, if I went on bush operations, I always used to carry the M79 rocket launcher, which is a single shot that shoots a 40mm rocket. So I usually have at least six of those, and it would usually be in my backpack at the back, because if we get attacked by overwhelming force, that will sort it out for sure. You used to carry at least 2 M26 hand grenades, and those days we used to carry a White Fox as well. So in case there's real trouble, and especially if the bush is dry, you can use that to expel the enemy, and obviously the bush will burn, and whatever it hits, the White Fox grenade. And then in our selection course, the final phase that we usually do is tactical parachute freefall, where you get taught to do freefall and then also jump with kit with about 40 or 60 kgs between your legs, so that you can land and then deploy anywhere in the field where you have to with all your kit. Our selection course was a little bit messed up. We were very strong guys. We were at the end, we were 26. And they tried to break us, but the group was so strong they could not break us. So what they did then, because they then thought the group is too big, because they never had it. So they brought in a couple of us one evening, and they sat us down on chairs, and they warned us for this and this and this. You usually don't know why they're warning you, but you just say, yes, Sergeant, yes, Warrant Officer, whatever. No, Sergeant. So they removed 5 of us. They sent them home. They should not have done that. They should have left those 5 guys that the officer sold them out, because some of those guys would have been excellent operators. And some of the guys that went through might have probably not been acting this day. And we did our, we did our skydiving course before we did survival. So some guys got injured, with skydiving. It usually happens. Some, break an ankle or something. So some of the guys couldn't complete the 3 weeks survival phase, which was quite tough, but I still went through to the office. For me, just to say, obviously, the book that I've written, and also when I do podcasts, it is to honor all the good operators that I served with, all the good guys, that gave everything for their country and to save people. It is for them, and then obviously for the honor of the unit, to remember the unit and to remember the guys that served in the unit.
Did you receive any training for medical or anything like that?
Yes, you do basic medical course on your selection course, but then some of us, you can choose if you want to do it, because there's many courses that you can choose from, and you have to specialize in one. What you have, the 2 courses you have to do after you finish your selection is diving course. He's like a rescue diver, emergency diver, and as well you have to do your explosive course. After that, they expect you to do at least 1 more course, and you have to specialize in something. So you can specialize in diving, you can become a sniper, that's a separate course. And we did, you know, basic tracking on our survival and in our selection process. So I can, for instance, I can track, but there are specialist courses, tracking courses, a basic tracker course, which you can go do. I think it's 6 weeks. I never did those courses. And then there's an advanced tracker course where some of the operators that did it, they told me that was probably one of the most difficult courses. So that is something you can specialize in.
Are there any operations that you are a part of that you can talk about and share with us?
You want a nice hostage to release out of a prison? For instance, you know, a prison is made for nobody to break into, and it's also made for nobody to break out of. So St. Albans 2 was one of our most difficult hostage release operations that we ever did. There was 5 people held hostage, 5 men and 1 woman. I think 70 something in a 70 prisoners that kept them hostage there, and they basically had all the angles covered, so you couldn't open the prison doors with the key, because they would take soap and whatever to block those holes. Our first attempt didn't go that well. I write it in detail in my book. And a second attempt, we did proper planning. We even went to a prison that were close by, that the walls and everything were much the same. So we designed, some of the guys that were involved in that designed certain hooks so we can use our fast rope or climb up certain walls. And then each specialist in his field, for instance, if you were explosive specialist, then you would place the explosives on the door, because we had to come in from the side, and then you get the hallway. Then it would be, you know, a 40-meter rundown before you get to the other side. So you didn't have immediate access to where we thought the hostages were. So I was now the rope climbing rescue instructor, and I was one of the experts in that. So me and Henny van Rooyen climbed onto the roof, but very, very slowly. We couldn't make any noise. This was in the early morning hours. And we fixed our ropes on the roof at various points, and then we were supposed to jump down in front of the window where the hostages were kept, where we thought they were kept. And our role was very important because we had to buy time for the other groups to be able to blast the cell doors. I mean, they blasted 30-40 meters down the hallway with the explosives, you know. So on the when the two-spring teken, which is the go-ahead sign, so they will call down 3, 2, 1, and then you know you go on 0. So I measured my rope and I jumped, and as I landed in front of the window, you know, the wall was a little bit far away. They had this blanket in front of me, and you can feel your heart beating, you know, in your chest. You can feel that adrenaline pumping. And then I knew I couldn't see anything. So I just made if I could see, and I fired a few shots in the courtyard, you know, obviously not into the room. And I just dominated with my voice, and 2 other guys threw stun grenades in this courtyard, you know, and I got quite an earful because of that. But then it gave the rest of the team's chance to come in, you know, and then to diffuse the situation. And then we had to clamber back on the rope up on the roof, and we went down all the way. Now we also wanted some action, but when we came there, everything was finished. But we really did an excellent job there. That was definitely one of the most difficult hostage releases we've ever done. And no hostages got injured, you know, they all were unarmed.
You know, there's many units around the world who claim to be the experts at hostage rescue. I think that story really put them to the test to step up to that, to match that skill.
Yeah, and the task force gets a lot of experience because there are lots of hostage situations. So it's not that we wait a year or two before there's a hostage situation. It happens actually quite regularly. And another thing that we do also quite well, that we used to do, that they still do well now, especially I read about the Durban task force every now and then, is this cash and transit heists. And obviously they're all armed AK-47s or heavier than that. And then it's always a shooting match. And yeah, so there is a lot of experience to gain.
You've had a very extensive career in law enforcement, in the Special Task Force. For people who would like to get into law enforcement, come on the job, as we say, what advice would you have for them?
Well, be physically, mentally fit. You have to be the correct person for the job. Law enforcement is very important, especially in South Africa now. It's getting more and more difficult because the crime is actually escalating here. Don't be corrupt, otherwise don't join law enforcement. We don't want any corrupt people in it. And we, you know, I'm now a private citizen, but we depend on our law enforcement still, and we're still proud of the ones that does a good job. You know, and so with the military as well, you know, we need them and we need good people. So if you're up for the task, join, please make a difference like I did, like all the other operators that served with me did.
You know, you've covered a lot in this conversation. I'm curious, you've talked about the past operations, but what do you think is the future for the Special Task Force? What are the biggest threats that you believe are coming up now that might have been different from what you had to deal with, that you think the Special Task Force is going to have to address now in the future?
I can basically just speak of what I see on the news because I don't really have any contact with them. I mean, it's been a few years now. I've been in, I can't say more or less the work that I do overseas sometimes and sometimes in South Africa for now 21 years. And I can say I've never lost a client, I've never lost a buddy, nothing. So, you know, I'm very proud of that, I must say, and that's why I keep my wits about me, I keep fit, and I try and use my experience and everything to make sure the people I need to protect when I have to, or if I have to do risk assessments, I do it to the best of my ability. They would probably face more or less the same that we faced. I can't elaborate too much about them currently. When they did the Dubai SWAT games, you know, then I monitor how they do. This year they did quite well, actually. The previous year they didn't do that well, so you know, we're proud of them if they do well. What they also might face is this looting that we experienced last year in KwaZulu-Natal, you know, where they burn down the big warehouses, and they also try and go into the private residences of the people, the private neighborhoods, where even the owners themselves, they had to protect their neighborhoods and they had to close it down because the police couldn't deal with everything. I was overseas that time, so I basically just, watched the news. And hostage situations is definitely not going to calm down. It's going to get worse. If you look at how the crime is increasing and what is happening in South Africa, you will know that their job is not going to get any easier. And they have to adapt, according to what their officers tell them, and the head office, how they have to adapt. They must just do it to the best of their ability to be able to complete the task and be proud of what they've done, when they leave. Because in the special task force, you can basically only stay for so long until you're actually not really physically, I would almost say, because you have to be of a very physical fit, you have to be strong, and you have to be mentally capable and strong, obviously, to do his job. So most guys I was there for 10 years. Some guys were 18 years and they were still operational. And that is about your max. After that, if you stay longer, they'll move you into an admin position, or you'll be the commander or whatever.
Well, I know we're only scratching the surface there. There's much more covered in your book. How can people get a copy of your book?
Worldwide on Amazon.com. You just search for the Special Task Force, and then anywhere in the world you can purchase it. People in South Africa, they can also buy it on Amazon, or there's Group 7 where they can buy the book from, or some people contact me directly, even people from overseas, because they want me to sign it for them and I want me to write in a special message, which I do with pleasure.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much. And I know it's getting late over there, so I'm not going to keep you, but thank you for coming on the show.
No problem.